He walked into the world with a quiet storm in his chest, a man not yet hardened, not yet broken, but dangerously close to both. His name was Thomas Wren, and the world hadn't been kind. Raised in a crumbling suburb outside Chicago, by the time Thomas was old enough to spell ambition, life had already taught him that survival was not given. It was earned or seized. But here's where it began. The moment that changed everything wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a car crash or a public betrayal. It was a whisper in his own mind that said, "No more. No more waiting for recognition. No more bending for approval. No more asking the world for permission to matter." That whisper grew louder until it roared a single truth. Power is not granted, it is taken. And those who wait become footnotes in the stories of men who never did. Thomas had lived long enough to see how the world treated the weak. They were ignored, dismissed, pitied at best. But power, real power, was magnetic. It bent the rules, shaped outcomes, and altered the course of lives. And so, on an ordinary morning, Thomas made an extraordinary decision. He would not be pitied. He would be powerful. And if it cost him everything to rise, he would still choose the climb. You see, life doesn't care about your dreams. It doesn't yield to hope or prayer. Life is a field of war, and only those who wield their mind like a blade carve their name into the stone of legacy. Thomas understood this. He studied men like Machiavelli, not for comfort, but for clarity. Machiavelli had said men are driven either by fear or self-interest. Thomas knew, if he wasn't feared, he had to be useful. If he was neither, then he was invisible, and invisibility was no longer an option. So Thomas turned inward. He cut away the noise. He withdrew from meaningless obligations and began to study himself, the world, and the forces that governed both. Focus became his first weapon, distraction, his enemy. He realized that the battle was not out there. It was inside. It was fought daily in the silence of his own choices. This is where your journey parallels his. If you're still asking the world to notice you, to validate you, you're in the waiting room of power. But if you, like Thomas, are ready to demand more, not from others, but from yourself, then this story is your mirror. The world won't yield, but you can rise. You can bend your life with the force of your will. That's the message. That's the command. Focus on yourself until you win. Eliminate distractions. Cultivate willpower. Let your silence become heavy. Let your name become sharp. Let failure itself begin to dread your footsteps. You don't beg for power. You build it. Comment below. I choose power over pity. Focus, the most undervalued asset in the modern world. The average man today leaks his energy into devices, distractions, and dead-end conversations. But not Thomas. Not anymore. Once he understood the rules of the game, he knew the first law of power. Focus is the blade that cuts through chaos. And so, he began sharpening it relentlessly. In his old life, Thomas had been scattered, 1 foot in, 1 foot out, chasing too many things, finishing nothing. He would start a project, get bored, jump to another. He listened to too many opinions, checked his phone too often, accepted every invitation. And for all his effort, he had little to show. His days were filled, but his progress was invisible. Until one day, he asked a question that froze him cold. What if I spent the next 5 years locked in on one mission? That question haunted him, not because it was dramatic, but because he knew the answer. Everything would change, everything. Focus, he realized, was not just productivity. It was identity. What you focus on, you become. If you focus on comfort, you become soft. If you focus on pain, you become bitter. But if you focus on power, on building, forging, and sharpening, you become unstoppable. Every morning, Thomas repeated a ritual. One task, one target, no distraction. He turned off the noise, notifications, gossip, entertainment designed to seduce mediocrity. He crafted his day like a soldier prepares for war. Cold showers, deep work blocks, solitude, study. He wasn't chasing balance, he was chasing mastery, and focus was the bridge. Science supports this path. Studies in neuroscience reveal that deep, uninterrupted focus triggers a state called flow, where time vanishes and performance spikes. It's the state elite athletes, top CEOs, and special forces operate in. It's where progress compounds. But the catch? You only reach it through discipline. You must protect your attention like it's sacred, because it is. Thomas was no longer the man who checked his phone at every buzz. He became the man who forgot his phone even existed. His mind, once cloudy with comparison and noise, became laser sharp. He didn't talk about his goals anymore. He executed. He didn't explain his distance. He simply vanished into his work. And people noticed, not because he announced it, but because presence speaks loudest when it's paired with absence. He stopped being available to everyone, and suddenly everyone wanted his time. That's the paradox of focus. When you remove yourself from the chaos, your value multiplies. You want to rise? Then adopt this discipline. Treat your focus like a fortress. Guard it, train it, direct it. Don't multitask, prioritize. Don't react, plan. Don't scroll, build. Let others chase dopamine while you chase dominion. Every hour spent in distraction is theft from your future, and when they ask how you did it, why you always seem 10 steps ahead, tell them this: I didn't waste my fire. I aimed it. Comment below. My focus is my fortress. Power doesn't arrive politely. It doesn't knock on your door or whisper sweet affirmations. It comes through cold calculation, sharp discernment, and ruthless self-control. That's what Thomas learned next. Focus had cleared his vision, but clarity without strategy was still a silent weapon. If he wanted to hold power, not just touch it, he had to master what he began calling the cold psychology of power. Most people walk through life as open books, emotions scribbled across their faces, intentions leaking from every word. They are predictable, easily rattled, easily manipulated, easily broken. But Thomas? He was becoming unreadable, not because he hid in shadows, but because he no longer reacted. He watched, he listened, and in that silence, he saw the truth of people. He learned this: people crave comfort. They avoid conflict. They mask fear with friendliness. They obey pressure and fold under tension. The moment you realize this, the world changes. You no longer take behavior at face value. You see what's beneath it. When someone lashes out, you see fear. When they flatter you, you see motive. When they ghost you, you see weakness. Machiavelli wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved." Thomas didn't misunderstand this as cruelty. He understood it as clarity. Love, after all, is conditional. It wavers. But fear, true, earned fear, is rooted in respect, and respect built on discipline and silence endures. So he began moving with purpose, not noise. He responded to insults with stillness. He met pressure with presence. He no longer announced boundaries. He enforced them, quietly and without apology. In psychological terms, this is called emotional regulation, a core skill of leaders, negotiators, and power players. Those who can stay calm under attack, who can listen without interrupting, who can respond without reacting. These are the ones who rise. Their calm is unnerving because it signals dominance, not over others, but over themselves. Thomas cultivated this daily. He tracked his emotional triggers like a scientist. He replaced every impulse with a strategy. Anger? Paused. Envy? Transmuted into fuel. Despair? Examined, not indulged. Where most collapsed under pressure, Thomas leaned in. He let the fire sculpt him. People began treating him differently. They couldn't read him, so they respected him. They couldn't provoke him, so they feared him. He was no longer playing defense. He was the one pulling strings. He no longer saw people as problems. He saw them as patterns, predictable, programmable. Not because he lacked empathy, but because he had awakened to truth. And that truth was this: if you cannot control your own mind, you will never command anything else. Every great leader in history, Caesar, Lincoln, Washington, mastered themselves before they mastered the world. Emotional volatility is a crack in the throne. Thomas sealed his. You must do the same. Master your psychology. Watch more. Speak less. Observe patterns. Read motives. Use silence as a mirror. Become the man whose presence unsettles the room, not with volume, but with depth. That is cold psychology. That is the power that cannot be faked. Comment below. Fear is my shield. Focus is my sword. Pain is life's most honest teacher. It strips away the fluff, tears down the illusions, and introduces you to the raw truth of who you are. Most men run from pain. They medicate it, suppress it, or worse, wear it like a badge to elicit pity. But Thomas? He did something different. He turned his pain into power. Everyone has wounds. Some are fresh. Some are buried deep beneath layers of pride or denial. But make no mistake, They're there. Thomas had his share. Abandonment, betrayal, financial collapse, nights where the silence in his apartment felt louder than any scream. But instead of numbing the ache, he studied it. He let pain speak, and it told him everything he needed to know. Pain, he realized, isn't a punishment. It's a signal. It shows you where you've placed your trust carelessly. It shows you what matters. It exposes what's weak in your character. Most importantly, it reveals your limits and dares you to go beyond them. Pain becomes power the moment you stop resisting it and start extracting from it. Thomas began treating pain like a forge. Every heartbreak became steel in his spine. Every failure became grit in his gut. He stopped asking, "Why me?" and started asking, "What is this trying to build in me?" That shift changed everything. He didn't just survive storms. He absorbed them, broke them down, and rebuilt himself stronger. This idea is not new. Stoic philosophers like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius taught it centuries ago. The obstacle is the way. What stands in the path becomes the path. Neuroscience confirms this too. Resilience isn't genetic, it's trained. By facing adversity head-on, neural pathways for discipline, adaptability, and emotional strength are reinforced. Pain, scientifically speaking, rewires you, if you let it. Thomas did. He stopped running, he stopped hiding, he revisited every scar and asked, "What weapon lies beneath this wound?" And there, in the silence of his suffering, he found his edge. He began to wear pain like armor, not visible, not boastful, but undeniable. You could see it in his posture, hear it in his voice, feel it in his presence. People couldn't quite explain it, but they knew this man had suffered, and he had won. This is your invitation. Stop wasting your suffering. Don't talk about it endlessly. Don't deny it exists. Instead, study it, convert it. Let it be the gym where your character is trained, the fire where your excuses are melted down. Because pain, when wielded with purpose, becomes the most personal form of power. Ask yourself, are you letting pain define you, or are you using it to refine you? That answer shapes your future. Comment below. My pain builds my power. There's a truth that few have the courage to speak, let alone live. If you want to rise above the average, if you want to stand where others fear to climb, you must learn the art of controlled ruthlessness, not rage, not cruelty, not chaos, but calm, calculated, necessary ruthlessness. Thomas understood this the hard way. He used to be too forgiving, too patient, too eager to be seen as good. He thought kindness would shield him, but life taught him otherwise. The more he tolerated disrespect, the more he received. The more he gave without discernment, the more he was drained. The world doesn't reward unfiltered kindness, it exploits it. Controlled ruthlessness isn't about abandoning your morality, it's about defending your mission. You see, mercy without power is weakness, and weakness is blood in the water. It invites leeches, manipulators, opportunists. Thomas decided he would never bleed for those who would not lift a finger for him. And that decision changed everything. He began making cuts, not out of hatred but clarity. Toxic friendships, gone. Energy-draining obligations, cut. Pointless arguments, silenced. He realized that to build anything lasting, you have to remove what corrodes from within. You must prune, sometimes painfully, to protect the growth of your future. Machiavelli once said, "A ruler must learn how not to be good." This isn't a license for cruelty, it's a blueprint for survival. Men who cling to virtue in all situations are eaten alive by those willing to bend the rules. Thomas didn't become cruel. He became clean, precise, disciplined. He stopped sacrificing himself on the altar of other people's comfort. Psychologically, this is called assertive detachment. It's the ability to prioritize your own vision without guilt, to make hard decisions without emotional sabotage. It's a trait found in top performers, leaders, generals. They don't confuse being liked with being respected, and they don't hesitate when the mission is at stake. Thomas lived this. He no longer explained why he cut ties. He no longer softened the blow. He moved like a shadow, quiet, firm, final. And it earned him something few men ever gain: unwavering boundaries. The people around him learned quickly. His time, his mind, his presence were earned, not given. Some resented him, but all respected him. You must reach this level. Stop fearing rejection. Stop fearing judgment. Start fearing wasted years, wasted energy, wasted potential. Be kind, yes, but only where it's earned. Be loyal, but only where it's mutual. When it's time to strike, strike. And do it with precision, not apology. Controlled ruthlessness is the scalpel that removes decay from your life. It is the gatekeeper of your empire. Use it. Comment below. I strike with clarity, not emotion. The strongest fortress is not made of brick, steel, or stone. It is built quietly, deliberately, within the human mind. And the man who builds it cannot be conquered, not by words, not by chaos, not even by tragedy. That is what Thomas committed himself to next, constructing a fortress no enemy could breach because it lived entirely within him. Most people walk around with open doors to their minds. They allow in doubt, distraction, envy, and weakness without question. They listen to critics who've built nothing. They absorb opinions from the unqualified. Their minds are porous, easily infiltrated, and when pressure arrives, they collapse like hollow walls. Thomas chose another path. He began building his mental fortress brick by brick. It started with his thoughts. He audited every one of them. Every belief, every assumption, every internal voice that whispered limitation or fear, he challenged it. And if it didn't serve his mission, he removed it. This wasn't positive thinking. It was psychological warfare. He treated his mind like sacred ground. Every morning, he fortified it with routines, stillness, reflection, focus. He practiced cognitive discipline. He wouldn't allow himself to dwell on what he couldn't control. He wouldn't replay past failures unless they taught him something. He wouldn't imagine worst-case scenarios unless he was planning how to overcome them. Everything else was filtered out. This process was informed by Stoic philosophy. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Thomas took this literally. He stopped trying to bend the world. He bent himself into steel. The world could rage, but inside, he was unmoved. That calm was not weakness, it was armor. In psychological terms, this is resilience training. Neuroscience shows that repeated mental discipline changes the brain's architecture. The amygdala, the emotional center, shrinks. The prefrontal cortex, the rational center, strengthens. You literally rewire yourself for composure, for clarity, for power. As Thomas built this fortress, others noticed, not because he flaunted it, but because he didn't flinch. When life threw chaos, he responded with order. When others panicked, he planned. When insulted, he didn't react. That silence unnerved people more than anger ever could. His emotional stability became his dominance. You must build the same. Guard your mind like a gate. Not everyone gets in. Not every thought deserves airtime. If a belief weakens you, remove it. If a voice poisons you, silence it. Discipline is the mortar of your fortress. Reflection is the blueprint. And daily action is how the walls rise. Because here's the truth. When your mind is a fortress, the storms of life no longer scare you. They only test your defenses, and you pass. Comment below. My mind is my fortress, fear and respect. These are the twin pillars of power, not charm, not popularity, not applause. Because charm fades, popularity shifts, applause dies in silence. But fear and respect, they remain. Thomas knew this. Thomas knew he'd been liked before. In his earlier life, he made people laugh, said yes to every request, made himself agreeable. And yet when he needed support, real support, it vanished. He was ignored, sidelined, forgotten. That was the day he realized, people don't value what they do not fear losing. So he shifted. He began walking differently, speaking less, acting with calm precision, no more explaining, no more seeking approval. He learned to become a presence, not a personality, and with that presence came power. Because when people feel your boundaries before they even test them, they tread carefully. But let's be clear, commanding fear is not about intimidation, it's about decisiveness. Men fear the man who doesn't hesitate, the man who makes decisions with finality, who doesn't bluff, who delivers consequences without emotion. That kind of man is unsettling because he's unreadable. He doesn't negotiate with disrespect, he doesn't beg for peace, he simply enforces it. Respect is earned differently. Respect is consistency. It's being unshakable when others collapse. It's doing what you said you'd do every time. It's holding your principles, even when it costs you. People respect what they cannot replicate. Thomas didn't talk about discipline. He lived it. He didn't lecture about values. He embodied them. And the gap between him and others grew wider with every decision. Machiavelli once warned, if you are only feared, you will be hated. If you are only respected, you will be tested. But if you are both, you become untouchable. So Thomas made sure both were present. His kindness had limits. His patience had boundaries. He would praise you when you rose, but crush betrayal with silence and distance. This, psychologically, is boundary enforcement at its highest form. People respond not to your words, but to your consistency. When you tolerate disrespect, you license it. When you confront it immediately, you train the world to treat you with precision. Most people hope to be treated well. Thomas made it mandatory, and people changed around him. They stood straighter. They measured their words, not because he demanded submission, but because he commanded presence. That's what happens when fear and respect live in harmony. You don't need to raise your voice. The room lowers its own. Ask yourself, are you respected or tolerated? Are your boundaries felt or ignored? Do people consider the cost of crossing you, or do they gamble freely? If they're gambling, it's because you haven't set the price yet. Comment below. Fear and respect walk with me. Power is never an accident. It is built, brick by brick, decision by decision, sacrifice by sacrifice. If you study the lives of men who shaped history, you'll find the same truth. Behind every throne is a strategist. Behind every empire is a mind that plotted in silence. That's what Thomas became, a man of strategy. It began with a realization. Most men react. They stumble through life responding to problems, chasing impulses, drowning in distractions. They move without direction, without precision. Thomas saw it everywhere, men waiting for the right time, the perfect moment, the guaranteed outcome. But he knew the truth. The right time is now, and perfection is a lie. So he began playing the long game. While others chased instant gratification, he studied patterns. While others reacted emotionally, he paused. While others moved loudly, he moved strategically. He knew that every move made today could pay dividends years from now. Every decision was a seed. The harvest would come, but only if he planted with discipline. Machiavelli wrote that fortune favors the prepared. Strategy is preparation multiplied by patience. Thomas stopped chasing every opportunity. He cut ruthlessly. He didn't say yes to everything. He said yes only to what aligned with his mission. This gave him something rare. Momentum without noise. Psychologically, this is long-term orientation, a trait found in high achievers and visionaries. It requires cognitive discipline, the ability to delay gratification, to endure boredom, to resist distractions. It's not flashy, it's not glamorous, but it builds empires. Thomas tracked everything: time, results, emotions. He learned his own rhythms. He designed his days like a general plans a campaign. He studied others too, quietly. He watched how they moved, what they valued, what they feared. And when the time came to act, he acted with surgical precision, one move, clean, final. But strategy is not just about action, it's about perception. Machiavelli also warned rulers to appear virtuous, even if they are not. Thomas understood this. The world doesn't reward truth, it rewards image. So he crafted his. He appeared calm, humble, agreeable. But behind the curtain, he was calculating, observing, adapting. The world saw the smile. Only he knew the strategy. This duality is not deceit, it's design. Leaders must learn to move in layers, to project one face and think with another, to speak in peace and prepare for war. This is how power is maintained without being contested. You must do the same. Decide what you want 10 years from now. Build backwards. Eliminate what doesn't serve that vision. Don't seek applause. Seek position. Don't chase every opportunity. Chase the right one. Move like a king. Not all at once, but with purpose. Every step deliberate. Every silence strategic. And remember, the man who builds in silence is never truly seen until it's too late to stop him. Comment below. I play the game to win. There's a level beyond discipline, beyond power, beyond strategy. It's not something you can fake. It's not something you can buy. It's something you become. That level is untouchable. Thomas had climbed many mountains: focus, control, strategy. But this was different. This wasn't about achievement. It was about identity. He no longer wanted to win occasionally. He wanted to become the kind of man who couldn't lose, not because he avoided failure, but because failure couldn't shake him. Untouchable men aren't numb. They feel the pain, the betrayal, the pressure, but they move anyway. They do not beg, they do not break, they do not seek rescue. They rise with calm eyes and cold resolve. And Thomas? He had become one of them. It started with detachment, not apathy. There's a difference. Apathy is indifference. Detachment is strength. It means no longer needing things outside yourself to validate your identity, not approval, not comfort, not outcomes. Thomas practiced detachment like a soldier sharpens his weapon. He let go of needing to be liked. He stopped needing to explain himself. He didn't fear solitude. He embraced it. This mental independence made him unpredictable. People couldn't provoke him. They couldn't sway him with praise or shame him with silence. He was self-contained, and that made him dangerous. Because you can't manipulate a man who needs nothing from you. Psychologists call this internal locus of control, the belief that you are responsible for your life, your emotions, your path. Men with this trait are statistically more resilient, more successful, and less prone to anxiety. They are not passengers. They are the driver, the engine, and the map. Thomas began seeing setbacks as mirrors, not barriers. Failure didn't shake him. It taught him. Pain didn't paralyze him. It refined him. Betrayal didn't harden him. It clarified his circle. He didn't panic when things collapsed. He adapted, adjusted, advanced. This was the root of being untouchable, not immunity to chaos, but sovereignty within it. And here's the irony. When you reach this level, people respect you without knowing why. They lower their voices when you enter. They don't interrupt you. They feel something, not arrogance, but certainty. Not noise, but gravity. You become a force, not a personality. This is your task. Become that force. Stop letting small people shake you. Stop letting outcomes define you. Stop letting comfort seduce you. Cut the cords of need. Sharpen your focus. Fortify your mind. Detach from illusions and build a life that cannot be stolen from you. Because when you become untouchable, the world stops testing you. It starts adjusting to you. Comment below. I am untouchable. This is the end game, the convergence of everything Thomas had built, focus, control, strategy, detachment, into one final transformation. Because all the knowledge in the world means nothing without execution. Power without action is just decoration. And men who decorate themselves with potential but never move are forgotten. Thomas knew this. He had studied, he had sharpened. But now, he had to act. Not once, not sporadically, daily, relentlessly, without applause, without validation. Because the world doesn't kneel to theory, it kneels to results. Machiavelli said, "Men judge more by the eye than by the hand," meaning, they believe what they see, not what you feel. They respect what you build, not what you intended. Thomas didn't just become untouchable, he made sure he looked untouchable. His presence became as precise as his mind. Every movement deliberate, every word calculated, every silence heavy. He didn't chase attention. He didn't shout his plans. He radiated inevitability. That's what people felt when he entered a room. Certainty. They sensed that no matter the situation, he would rise. Not because he claimed to, but because his track record was carved in results. This was the final command. Embodiment. Not talking about power, living it, not dreaming of control, exercising it, not hoping for influence, becoming it. Thomas aligned every part of his life with his principles. No more gaps between values and actions. No more delay between thought and movement. Discipline became automatic. Strategy became instinct. But here's the paradox. When you reach this level, resistance increases. The world pushes harder. Envy grows. Tests multiply. Because true presence makes others uncomfortable. Weak men feel threatened. Critics sharpen their knives. But Thomas didn't shrink. He welcomed the pressure. Because pressure is confirmation. Pressure means you're rising. He accepted that life is war, not always with others, but always within. The battle to remain focused, to protect your energy, to make decisions that cost comfort but buy legacy. Thomas lived this war every day, and he won because he refused to rest on yesterday's victory. This is where you must arrive. Let your routine speak louder than your goals. Let your presence whisper louder than your whir. Let your execution silence every doubter. Your body, your voice, your habits, your energy. They should all tell the same story. I'm not here to participate. I'm here to dominate. And remember, being untouchable isn't about perfection. It's about precision. It's about clarity of purpose. It's about daily action without need for applause. It's about walking so aligned with your mission that even failure grows tired of trying to stop you. Now, the world is watching. And the only question left is, will you act? Comment below. I command my destiny. Thomas had reached a new elevation, one that few ever glimpse. But power, real power, is not static. It must be fed, tested, reinforced, and the higher you climb, the more intense the storms become. Not because life is cruel, but because greatness demands resistance. Strength must be proven again and again. He understood this well. He didn't seek ease. He didn't beg for peace. He anticipated the pressure. He welcomed the weight. Why? Because resistance is the signal that you're moving beyond the average. Weak men attract comfort. Strong men attract chaos, and the untouchable, they attract destiny. There were days when it would have been easy to coast, to rely on his past wins, to pause and celebrate. But Thomas knew the truth. Comfort is a slow poison. It seduces the powerful into forgetting what made them powerful. He wouldn't allow it. He treated every day like war, every decision like a campaign. Strategy wasn't something he did, it was who he became. And here's what separates men like Thomas from the rest. His self-discipline didn't depend on motivation. He wasn't driven by mood or weather or external pressure. He had built systems that executed, even when he didn't feel like it. His environment served his vision. His routines guarded his time. His circle respected his silence. Science backs this principle. Habits, when tied to identity, become self-sustaining. Neural pathways become automatic. The brain no longer negotiates. It executes. That's how you become consistent without burnout. You don't chase discipline. You become discipline. Thomas structured his life to filter out anything that didn't move him forward. People who drained his focus? Gone. Opportunities that offered short-term pleasure but no long-term gain? Rejected. He turned solitude into strength and repetition into ritual. That's how he stayed sharp while others rusted, and make no mistake, he still faced betrayal, failure, doubt. But none of it reached him. Not because he didn't feel, but because he was fortified. He felt the punch, absorbed it, and moved forward anyway. That's what it means to be untouchable. Not immune, but unstoppable. You must build the same. Do not fear pressure, embrace it. Do not beg for motivation. Build systems. Do not seek comfort. Seek clarity. Surround yourself with habits, people, and principles that make weakness impossible. That's how power becomes permanent. This path isn't for everyone. But if you've come this far, you already know that. You weren't made to blend in. You weren't made to be soft. You were made to rise, to endure, to become the one man others look to when the room shakes. So, carry the weight and let the world test you. Comment below. Pressure proves my power. There's a point in every journey when solitude replaces applause. When silence becomes your only companion. When the crowd that once cheered you on fades into shadows. Most men collapse here. They mistake solitude for failure. But Thomas? He embraced it. Because he understood something critical. Solitude is not a void. It is a forge. Thomas spent months, even years, away from the noise. No parties, no idle conversation, no constant validation, just work, reflection, and relentless execution. While others sought distraction, he sought depth. While others looked for company, he looked inward. This wasn't isolation. This was refinement. In solitude, he heard his own voice clearly, not the voices of doubters or friends or social media. His voice, his mission, his truth. And that clarity, once found, became unshakable. He stopped asking for permission. What's that? He stopped waiting for consensus. The solitude turned his whisper into command. This is where most people fail. They crave attention. They seek belonging. They fear quiet. But here's the paradox. True identity is forged in silence. Purpose is uncovered when the world stops talking. Greatness is built when no one is watching. The oak tree grows tallest not because it's surrounded, but because its roots run deep in darkness before it breaks the surface. Psychologically, solitude triggers self-awareness. Studies in cognitive psychology show that periods of intentional isolation increase emotional intelligence, boost creativity, and build internal resilience. Leaders, visionaries, and inventors have always used solitude as a tool, not an escape, but a lab. Not to hide from the world, but to return stronger. Thomas emerged from his solitude different, not louder, but more precise. He no longer reacted to noise. He filtered it. He no longer explained his path. He walked it, and people noticed, not because he returned with a performance, but because his presence had deepened. There was gravity in him, not charisma, weight. The kind of weight that changes conversations and quiets rooms. You must find this space in your own life. Shut off the noise. Turn down the volume on everyone else's agenda. Enter your own lab. Face your reflection. Let solitude reveal what the world's noise tried to drown. Yes, it will be uncomfortable, but discomfort is the currency of transformation. Don't run from being alone. Run into it. Let it break you, then rebuild you. Because when you return from the fire of solitude, you don't come back seeking approval. You come back radiating authority. Comment below. I sharpen in silence. Legacy. That's what Thomas began to think about next. Not money, not recognition, but legacy. What would remain when he was gone? What weight would his name carry when he was no longer in the room? That's the question that sharpens everything. Because power is temporary, but legacy is eternal. Most people live like they'll never die. They waste time, burn bridges, chase trends, and compromise their principles for applause. But Thomas had reached a point where he understood. Every decision echoes. Every action carves your name deeper or erases it. Legacy is not what you build at the end. It's what you build daily. He began operating with legacy in mind. Every conversation, every project, every move, measured not just for impact but for endurance. Will this stand 10 years from now? Will it shape anyone's thinking? Will it inspire discipline in a world addicted to ease? That became his filter. Legacy doesn't mean fame. It means influence without presence. It's the force that continues moving others long after you've stepped away. It's the standard that makes others rise just by remembering your example. Thomas no longer lived for himself. He lived for the man who would one day read his words, hear his story, or follow his principles, and choose strength over comfort because of it. He knew that legacy required sacrifice, privacy over popularity, principles over profit, depth over distraction. He could have played a louder game, bragged more, built a bigger audience, sold out for attention. But he didn't, because he understood this. What builds fast dies fast, but what is built in discipline, in silence, in fire, that endures. Psychologists call this generative purpose, the desire to contribute to something larger than yourself. It's the core of fulfillment. People who live with generative purpose don't just chase goals, they shape futures. They don't just consume, they create. Their very existence becomes a message. Thomas became that message, not by branding himself, but by embodying values so consistently that others couldn't help but notice. His discipline challenged people. His silence made others question their noise. His clarity exposed their confusion. And over time, his example became contagious. You have the same responsibility. Whether you realize it or not, someone is watching you, a son, a peer, a stranger. Your choices are teaching them. Your standards are influencing them. The question is, what are you teaching? What are you leaving behind? Forget the trophies. Focus on the trail. Make every step so deliberate that when you're gone, the path remains. Comment below. I build a legacy, not a moment. There comes a moment when the inner war is over, not because the world stops attacking, but because you've outgrown the need to defend. That's the final evolution Thomas reached. He no longer needed to prove anything. He no longer responded to noise. He had become the mountain others crashed against. He moved differently now, not faster, but with more gravity. He didn't rush into rooms. He entered when it mattered. He didn't speak often, but when he did, people listened. Not because his voice was loud, but because it was rare, deliberate, final. There's a power in scarcity, and Thomas had mastered it. He no longer chased outcomes, he shaped them. People didn't just follow him, they aligned with him because his presence made them question their own standards. That's the thing about men like him. They don't dominate with aggression. They dominate by existing so completely that compromise becomes impossible. Internally, he was clean. No regrets, no confusion, no need to revisit old versions of himself. He had burned those bridges willingly, not out of hatred, but necessity. The man he used to be had served his purpose. He had built a new foundation, stone by stone, law by law. This is the final layer of power, inner stillness. The ability to be unmoved, not by suppressing emotion, but by mastering it. Emotional maturity is the highest form of dominance, not because it makes you invincible, but because it makes you sovereign. Thomas didn't avoid conflict, he diffused it with silence. He didn't run from challenge, he planned for it. He didn't fear betrayal, he expected it, and moved accordingly. And because of that, people feared disappointing him more than they feared punishment. They respected his absence more than they craved his attention. His standards became law, not because he demanded it, but because he embodied it. You must rise to the same level. Let your presence speak. Let your silence instruct. Let your integrity weigh more than your opinions. Become so grounded that storms no longer concern you. They validate you. Because only a man rooted in truth can remain unmoved when the world shifts. You're not here to impress. You're here to build. You're not here to win once. You're here to be the reason others win differently. And you can't do that unless your inner world is fortified, clean, and disciplined beyond doubt. Let others chase attention. Let others crave noise. You're becoming the weight in the room. Comment below. My presence is my power. This is the final chapter, not of the journey, but of the transformation. Thomas didn't just become powerful. He became permanent. He didn't just rise above men. He rewrote the standard, and not through noise, not through fame, but through discipline, clarity, and unwavering execution. You've seen the blueprint now. You've walked the path with him. You've felt the solitude, the pressure, the silence, and the power. And here's the truth that remains. It was never about becoming someone else. It was about remembering who you were before the world convinced you to shrink. The world will always try to tame you, to soften you, to distract you. But power belongs to the man who resists, the man who builds in silence, the man who sharpens his mind until even chaos fears him. Thomas became that man, and so can you. He didn't finish the journey with fanfare. There was no parade. Just a calm, a presence, a stillness that made everything else feel loud and desperate. He had become the fortress, not just mentally, not just emotionally, but existentially. He didn't need protection. He was the protection. And that's the mark of a truly untouchable man. He walks into every room like he belongs, speaks only when necessary, and executes without hesitation. His life is proof, not of perfection, but of principles lived daily, relentlessly, without compromise. That's the invitation before you. Build your fortress, eliminate the noise, Commit to the long war of becoming who you were meant to be. Make your presence undeniable. Let your scars become armor. Let your silence become strategy. Let your focus become a sword. And above all, never beg the world to see your worth. Show them with every breath that ignoring you is a mistake they'll only make once. Now is the time. Build without apology, move without fear, cut without hesitation, and rise until even failure hesitates to touch you. Comment below. I command my destiny. If this series moved you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, share this with someone who needs it, and leave your thoughts below. What part struck you the hardest? What changes are you making now? This is the Mental Fort, and here we build men who cannot be broken.